Saturday, May the 7th, 2022. What a magnificent day it is today. It's so beautiful out. Sun is shining. Blue sky. I'd like to continue with my review of COVID-19, The Great Reset. The book written by Schwab and Thierry Malleret. I reached up to page 62, so I'm over halfway through the book. Sorry, let me get organized here, and I'll try and get through this as quick as I can. So 2 videos ago, I said we already been through World War III and we lost to China. And then in the last video, I said, oh, maybe we actually lost to the WEF and whoever controls them, China and the US and other parties involved. But let's go back to my first statement. Maybe I wasn't so far off after all. So the last time my notes took me up to page 44, I think, somewhere around there. Page 41, I think. So let's catch up. I had 10 pages of notes in Microsoft Word deleted. I don't know how they pulled that trick on me, but in any event, I had to start over. Page 44, there is no new global order, just a chaotic transition to uncertainty. If you go all the way back to the first chapters, they reveal their intentions in the first chapter, that is a combination between a book and an essay. And it's a combination between descriptive and suggestive, or combination between describing what's happened and what they think should happen. So they're being very transparent, you could say, throughout this book, but the quality degrades as you go through it. And now we've reached a point of total chaos. Continuing on, this has been years in the making. This is interesting what they talk about here. This has been years in the making. The progressive rebalancing from the west to the east. They're describing the Great Reset. They're describing the events that we've experienced for the last 2 years, up until June 2020 when this was published. Rebalancing from the west to the east, a transition that generates global disorder. This inevitably occurs when a rising power like China rivals the ruling power like the US, like the United States. This confrontation will be a source of global messiness, disorder, and uncertainty for years to come, as I'm truncating some of these quotes, just so you know, but they're word for word. As the historian Neil Ferguson, the international scene is bound to increase international volatility. And they go on to say, a breakdown between China and the US that leads to war. All these and many more have now become plausible. And they say there's a risk, though. There's a risk with this rebalancing of west to east. They're saying that the shifting of power is going to the east. Well, we see the result of that. The risk is that the populist parties, and right-wing parties, around the world, most notably in the West, which when they come to power often retreat into nationalism, as if nationalism is this bad thing, and promote, an isolationist agenda. They don't necessarily go together. Nationalism doesn't necessarily promote isolationism. Oh, thank you for that note. Okay, I'm going to mark that as read. And promote 2 notions antithetical to globalization. And so on page 45, they set up this false trichotomy: democracy, nationalization, and globalization. And they say these 3 things cannot cooperate or cannot exist at the same time. And so what do they feel has to be destroyed? They suggest nationalization, right? Whereas democracy, nationalization, and globalization can all exist at the same time. So they're setting up a false logic here. The only problem I would suggest is that globalization needs to be put in its place, and to what extent globalization needs to be participated in. And I use that word globalization in quotes. So I'm not talking about their version of it, that's for sure. 97% of antibiotics supplied in the U.S. come from China. They throw that quote in there to show how great China is, I guess. Page 47. A hasty retreat from globalization would entail trade and currency wars, damaging every country's economy, provoking social havoc, and triggering ethno or clan nationalism. There's no time to waste. If we do not improve the functioning and legitimacy of our global institutions, the world will soon become unmanageable and very dangerous. There cannot be a lasting recovery without a global strategic framework of governance. They're telling you in this book, sorry I'm shaking around here so much it makes the screen shake. They're telling you straight out in this book their reasons or their understanding why they feel that globalism is the only solution to save the world, the only solution. And anything that promotes nationalism, and we can look at that in Canada here, anything that promotes pride in one's country, is it any wonder now that I'm reading this, as I said before, it opens my eyes to the actual thinking. It allows me to have empathy in the sense of understanding the way a globalist thinks. And it's certainly not the way I think, but at least now it allows me to put myself in their shoes and I can understand what they're thinking. Because if they've been taught this, if all these young global leaders have gone through this indoctrination program and been taught this is why we're in the state we are when the media demonizes anybody that wears a Canada flag or promotes, I should have my Canada hat on, I don't have it on, but anybody that puts a Canada flag now is demonized by the media. Why is that? Because of this type of indoctrination that has gone on, saying that the only solution to save the planet is global governance, right? A global strategic framework. That's the only thing. All these things that promote nationalism or anything related to a populist party. Populist party is just a party that's popular with the people. It's a grassroots thing that when the people come together and say, hey, we've had enough. We want to create our own way of doing things. This is anathema to the globalist mindset that says that the peasantry and the people on the bottom are too ignorant to rule themselves. We have to institute a strategic global framework to take over everything and to, have everything under minute control to save the planet. And I'll continue on that theme shortly here. Page 48. The U.S. went on to withdraw funding from the WHO, the World Health Organization. See, that's what happened under Orange Man from down south. And they don't like that at all. No matter the underlying rationale of this decision, the fact remains it is the only organization capable of coordinating a global response to the pandemic. They say we have to have the World Health Organization. There's no one else that can handle that, which means that, albeit far from perfect, the World Health Organization is infinitely preferable to a non-existent one. An argument that Bill Gates compellingly and succinctly made in a tweet. Their work is showing the spread of COVID-19 is slowing, the spread of COVID-19. And if that work is stopped, no other organization can replace them. The world needs the World Health Organization now more than ever. That's what Bill Gates said. So Bill Gates was on one end, Donald Trump was on the other end, and they didn't agree. Donald Trump said, I'm not following the World Health Organization. We quit. We don't want anything to do with the World Health Organization. And now the World Health Organization is in the process of taking over Canada's autonomy. I don't know if you're aware of that, but the World Health Organization is going to strip Canada from the option of responding to any future pandemics. And instead, once the next pandemic is announced, the World Health Organization will take over any medical processes, any medical treatments, any medical mandates, any medical directives, any medical instructions are going to be dictated by the World Health Organization, and they will have to be followed by the Canadian population. Did you know that? Leslyn Lewis tried to talk about that a little bit, and the media quickly jumped on her and said, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. That's not going to happen. That's not in the works. It is in the works. It's been in the works since this book was published. We need to wake up and realize that the way that these globalists think is not the way the average Canadian thinks. I can guarantee you that. This is a very eye-opening experience I'm having by reading through this and saying, you actually believe this? And the logic just gets worse and worse and worse as you go through this book. Page 49. The world is a very dangerous place, they say. Global coordination, I can't even speak. I haven't had enough coffee yet. Global coordination. Come on, Patty boy. Get with the program. Wake up. That's my age. See, I'm getting old here. Global coordination will be even more necessary in the aftermath of the COVID crisis, for it is inconceivable that the global economy could restart without sustained international cooperation. Without it, we'll be heading towards a poorer, meaner, and smaller world. Unlike the Soviet Union, not since there you go. Okay, I wrote that in my notes. This shows how old this is. They tipped their hand twice in these later chapters, because the first chapters is intelligently written, essentially. I mean, at least it's following a stream of logic that it's not damaging my brain. But in these later chapters, it gets worse and worse and worse. And they tip their hand twice in these later chapters. The first time is by using the term the Soviet Union. We know, anybody that keeps up to date with the geopolitical reality of what's going on in the world, is that this term hasn't been used since 1991. There is no Soviet Union anymore. That collapsed. We have Russia and we have all these independent countries, right? That's why I'm not going to segue into that. But they tipped their hand by showing how old this was written. This had to have been very, very old, or the writer doesn't have an editor. The editing is horrible. I had to edit it even just to take notes on it. So the writing has degraded as you go through this essay. The second time they tipped their hand was they still used the term global warming. Globalists and the green fanatics don't use the term global warming anymore. They use climate change, right? That's all we've heard for these last 2 years. We don't use global warming anymore because they weren't able to prove global warming. The temperature was either stable or within the range of variability that was acceptable. You know what I'm talking about. I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole either. I don't have to. Most of you are going to understand what I'm talking about here. So they say, unlike the Soviet Union, China is not seeking to oppose its ideology around the world. What a lie. What an absolute blatant lie. They say, oh, the Soviet Union, Russia, is seeking to impose its ideology around the world. When was the last time you felt that Russia or the Soviet Union was trying to impose its ideology around the world? They're either Orthodox Christians or a bunch of atheists. Drinking vodka. Are they trying to force the tradition of drinking vodka? And what Russian ideology? Bullshit. I call bullshit. I'm sorry. But this damaged me yesterday. I had to stop reading it because it was traumatizing to my soul, because it's full of BS with capital B, capital S. After 40 years of After 40 years of strategic engagement, the U.S. and China now seem unable to bridge the ideological and political divides that separate them. And again, they're probably referring to the dispute that, the previous president had. Far from uniting the two geopolitical giants, the pandemic did the exact opposite by exasperating the rivalry and intensifying competition between them. Well, tell us something we don't know. Okay, whatever. Page 50. Let's move on. Some see the U.S. as the ultimate winner. Others argue that China has already won. And a third group states there'll be no winners. And of course, they go through and they support the theory that China has already won. And the reason they say, because the reason China's already won is because American strength is irrelevant due to a microscopic enemy. Because the enemy of COVID-19 is microscopic, American strength is irrelevant. All right. Another reason they give, America was incompetent in its response. Okay. And it says it exposed aspects of American society that some may find shocking, like the deep inequalities in the face of the outbreak, the lack of universal medical coverage, and the issue of systemic racism raised by the Black Lives Matter movement. See, Black Lives Matter proved that the United States lost to China. This is the line of reasoning that they're using in this book. Can you imagine somebody writing this and turning this in as an essay in high school? I would have given them A+ on the first 2 chapters. I would have given the F. This does not follow the Latin term non sequitur. It does not follow. You're trying to make a point and then you're saying, because of this, then that. No. Learn to use your brain properly. And then they describe their argument as democracy versus autocracy. Autocracy is independent, a country that keeps itself independent and doesn't do much trade. It tries to be isolationist. But it's not what they're talking about. They're talking about democracy versus China's version of communism. That communism I talked about earlier that combines elements of capitalism to it. But there's too many rabbit holes to go down here. No winner argument is an idea put forward by Neil Ferguson. Neil Ferguson has been essentially debunked, in my opinion, as not as hyper intelligent as some people make him out to be. Page 53. Some countries like Nepal, Tonga, or Somalia will be inflicted with devastating shock to their economies with dramatic social implications, according to the World Bank. The impact of lockdowns and the ensuing economic hibernation that happened to so many countries around the world will cause a 20% decline in remittance to low and middle income countries. They're talking about the effect of lockdowns. Well, who's causing the lockdowns? You are. What are you talking about that for? Page 55, environmental reset. And this is where they really get into their agenda, the pandemic and the environment. They say these are more intertwined than we think. Climate change and ecosystem collapse are equated to the pandemic. How so, you might ask? How is climate change and ecosystem collapse related? And they say they possess many common attributes while displaying some strong dissimilarities. So they're saying two things at the same time. They say climate change and the pandemic are totally related, but they also are very unrelated. Who writes like that? Somebody that deserves a slap upside the head. I'm sorry, but it's angering. My notes are angering me. I shouldn't get angry. I'm going to talk about that later. Let me segue into that. Maybe it's a good time to talk about it. You know what the first words recorded of Jesus Christ are? Let it be. Not let it be. That's a paraphrase. Suffer it to be now, for thus it behooves us to fulfill all righteousness. What happened in that context? He asked John the Baptist to baptize him. And John the Baptist said, no, I can't do that. You know, you're Son of God, you're the Messiah. You know what? You should be baptizing me. And Jesus said, suffer it to be now, for thus it behooves us to fulfill all righteousness. Or the paraphrase is, hey, let it be, because this is going to fulfill what needs to be done. And I think we can look at the same thing here with the globalism, the power of these globalists, the power of the World Economic Forum, the power of the World Health Organization. The only thing we can do is sit back and say, hey, you know what? Let it be. Let it be. These people have their agenda. They want to take over control of the whole world, but God's still in control. And then I won't get upset. Then I'll calm myself down. So there's my segue there. Okay. Page 56, zoonotic diseases are those that spread from animals to humans. Most experts and conservationists, oh really, most experts? Like all experts? What, experts in baseball, experts in mining, experts in, oh, most experts, okay. Most experts and conservationists agree that they have already drastically increased in recent years, particularly because of deforestation, the phenomena that's also increased the carbon dioxide emissions, a lack of, it augments the risk of close human-animal contact. So see what they're saying here. They're saying because of climate change, there's an increase spread of diseases from animals to humans because these experts say that there's more human-animal interaction and contamination. How's that for mental gymnastics? How's that for BS with a capital B? They just made it up. They say most experts and conservationists. What experts? What conservationists? There's no footnote here. There's no nothing. It's just a statement that is so. In a recent letter to the U.S. Congress, 100 wildlife and environmental groups estimate that zoonotic diseases have quadrupled over the last 50 years. So they got 100 wildlife and environmental groups and say, hey, sign this letter. All these animal to human diseases are expanding because of climate change. And this is what caused the pandemic. This is what happened. And I'm quoting here. This is what might have happened, they say, at the market in Wuhan where the novel coronavirus is believed to have originated. Okay. Yeah, okay. You run with that. All right. Fair enough. Yeah, okay. Page 57. Air pollution is correlated with more COVID-19 deaths, right? If in the post-pandemic era we decide to resume our lives just as before, the COVID crisis will have gone to waste as far as climate policies are concerned. You see, they look at the COVID-19 crisis as an opportunity to push forward their climate agenda, and they're telling us here in no uncertain terms that if we have this pandemic and then in the post-pandemic area people still continue to eat meat and heat their homes and drive the same cars, then the COVID-19 crisis will have gone to waste. I'm quoting word for word here. They say they don't want this crisis to go to waste. They want to get people to stop eating meat. They want to get them to stop heating their houses. They want to get them to stop flying airplanes. They list them all here. I don't want to go through it again word for word. And they want them to stop driving cars. They say if people don't stop doing that, well, then the whole pandemic was a waste. We lost our opportunity to save the planet. All right. Okay. Yeah, that's good. Hug a tree. Good job. Keep on going here. Page 58, global warming. The second is spurred by a different narrative. Business and governments emboldened by new social conscience. Large segment of company. See, they're building this new social conscience. And it's pushed by activists, which help get the job done, right? The moment must be seized to take advantage of this unique window of opportunity to redesign a more sustainable economy for the greater good of our society. Yeah, that sustainable economy is in an economy that's been wiped out. They want to wipe out the economy. A policy paper prepared by this company by the name of System IQ in collaboration with the World Economic Forum. I looked up the footnote on this and I couldn't find this paper anywhere. Estimate that building a nature positive economy could represent more than 10 trillion per year by 2030. 10 trillion what? It doesn't even say what. Oh, it says in terms of new economic opportunities as well as avoided economic costs. Okay, so well, what are you talking about? 5 trillion in new economic opportunities and 5 trillion in avoiding economic costs? Is it 8 and 2? They just made the number up anyway. They're not going to explain what it is. It's totally ambiguous statement that they just made. In the short term, I'm continuing on here, deploying around 200. Now we've reached we've found what we have been looking for. In the short term, deploying around 250 billion of stimulus funding could generate up to a gazillion 37 million nature positive jobs in a highly cost-effective manner. Now we have found out what is going on, right? Resetting the environment could not be seen as a cost, but rather as an investment that will generate economic activity and employment opportunities. Where have you heard that before? When the Canadian government says, we're going to spend $1 gazillion on this green energy technology and it's going to create all these jobs. Oh, don't mind the fact that we're going to wipe out all the jobs in Alberta and buy our oil and gas elsewhere because we still have to buy it somewhere. We're just not going to buy it from Canadians because we're going to follow this globalist green agenda that we've been told to do by the World Economic Forum. $250 billion in stimulus funding. Do you see what these 100 global leaders have done? They've taken money and they've distributed it throughout the world to install all their people that are favorable to them. They fund these people. They get them installed in high-ranking government positions. They use their money as seed money. And then when they have control of all these governments, in particular Western governments for that matter, that's where most of the money is, they're not going to get much money out of the countries that are already impoverished, right? Then they get those people who are loyal to them to implement policies that deploy stimulus funding to the tune of $250 billion that comes back to them. Do you see how this works here? Do you see what they're telling us that their plan is? It's all about the money. Follow the money. They care about the planet. Sure they do. No wonder whenever they have their meetings in Davos and here and there and everything, they never wear masks. They don't wear masks because they know it's all part of their... And I got to be careful what I say here now, because if I say anything that this whole COVID-19 pandemic is not so serious, okay, Google, listen to what I'm saying, Google fact checkers. It's a very serious pandemic. It's very, very real and very, very killing gazillions and gazillions. I believe that. But when you see them all there gathered together, they're not wearing masks. They're waiting to get the stimulus funding, that flood of revenue to come in for all the efforts they've made to get their green agenda. That's why they're all connected. The green agenda, the COVID-19 response agenda, the control over the population agenda, to walk this way, wear this, do that. It's about total global control. That was all I could take. I'm on page 62. I'll try and read more and get this thing out of my system over the next few days because I never want to see this book again. It is a shame. It is poorly written. It is using idiotic assumptions that they've just pulled out of thin air with no scientific backing for it. They just say, oh, we did this study in cooperation with ourselves so that we could get the result we wanted. And if we spend $1 gazillion on this, it's going to make all these great things happen and make all this great opportunity happen. And it's damaging. It's damaging to the psyche to have to read these kind of words. And let me finish with this. Abiding in the Word, to be able to feed on words that are encouraging and are helpful to humanity. Most of the time, you can abide in words that are perhaps frivolous, perhaps they are pulp, they are like candy. You can read something, maybe it's a romance novel, maybe it's a military adventure, maybe it's fiction, maybe it's nonfiction, maybe it's a little bit of both mixed in together. And you read that and you feed on it, and it comforts us because it lets us share the human experience by proxy. so we can read a book and say, oh, that was nice, that was so pleasant, and I was able to experience that from the comfort of my porch, sit on the porch and watch the birds and experience faraway lands, experience adventures, experience romance, experience all these wonderful things by living in the words that someone else has prepared for me. This is a descent into madness, this book. This is a descent into illogical, fragmented, unconnected thinking. And the person that put it together, did you notice I was biting my lip there for a second? I'll continue to bite my lip so that I can survive and get through this thing. But it really hurt. And I shouldn't do this to my soul, because it's no surprise that I'm suffering from heart damage when I expose myself to this type of writing. I need to write a poem. What's the 3 most beautiful things in the world? Birds, flowers, women, with women being a distant third. That's from a poem that's not very nice towards women, is it? Little misogynistic overtones there. That shouldn't be a good poem. But something is far more beautiful than any of those 3. And that is words that are pure. Words that say, hey, let it be. Just relax. Calm down. Everything's going to be okay, because God's in control. These comforting words that show us that at the end of the day, I hate that phrase, at the end of time, when everything is summed up at the right time, at the right perfect time, when everything is summed up, truth prevails, love prevails, righteousness prevails, clear thinking prevails. In the meantime, there's things that appear to be chaotic and absolutely chaotic. But there's going to be another page of history. And that page is a place of beauty, joy, cooperation, happiness, peacefulness, and camaraderie. I did happen to go down to the event in Ottawa, and I experienced firsthand a lot of camaraderie, a lot of peace. And I sensed that the people that were there were hoping for even more peace. They were hoping for continued camaraderie. They were hoping for continued human interaction based on love and understanding. It's not what the media portrayed. It's not what our Canadian politicians tried to portray either. Far from it. It was experience in community, an experience in, hey, we're not exactly sure how we can continue our freedom. We're not exactly sure what these global influences are doing to disrupt us. But this book sheds a little insight on it. It sheds a little bit of insight of what the globalist forces are trying to perpetrate on humanity to achieve their own ends, their own twisted version of how to save the planet, their own twisted version that the only way that we can survive as a species is to decimate the economy, to decimate everything below their level. They don't care about flying their jets around, do they? They don't care about their super yachts? Of course not. You know how much fuel a yacht dumps into the ocean of any size? Look at a boat with twin Evinrude motors on it and see the oil slick that it makes in a lake. Come on. is hypocrisy of the nth degree that these globalists are perpetrating upon humanity. And it is shameful, it's despicable, it's based on idiotic ideas that are not founded in science. Look at the quote from the head of the Weather Network. I posted that one time when he talked about climate change and global warming. But I can't say anything like that on here. Otherwise, I run the risk of both being as unfounded as their statements and also, of course, being deleted. And so I won't step over that line. I'll keep it within bounds and I'll simply move forward. I'll get through this book and I will try and let it be, and I will try and abide in words that are a lot healthier for me than what I'm reading here. Thank you so much for watching. God bless you. I hope you get a chance to enjoy the fantastic weather that we're having this weekend. Today is Saturday, May the 7th, 2022. Things are going to get better. Let it be for now so that all these things will be fulfilled in the right time. God's in control. Thank you for watching. God bless you. I love you. Have a wonderful day. Take care now. Sorry I went on so long. I'll try to make my videos shorter in the future, okay? Take care now. Bye-bye. Love you. See you again soon. Bye-bye.